In this episode of our series on learning to play Osprey Games Reality's Edge, we are going to cover hacking. In the setting that makes up Reality's Edge, everything is connected to the HyperNet, which makes this digital representation of the real world an ideal space to maneuver your forces through or launch attacks from, either for you or your enemies. An easy way to think about it is that the HyperNet is like the magical weave that goes through all things, and hacking is the means by which you cast spells. There are two types of hacking, virtual and combat. Virtual hacking involves hacking networks from a distance, so this is where your virtual avatars, representing some individual far away from the scene, provide support to your crew, or defensive systems like sprites and intrusion countermeasure emulations, or ICE, cause trouble for them. While avatars can help you or hinder your crew, in the HyperNet, they cannot interact with the real physical world. Combat hacking is done by real-world characters physically on the scene, and so can interact with it, while also using their hacking tools to impact the HyperNet. Every model in the game has a firewall stat to show how susceptible they are to hacking. Not only that, their equipment, weapons, and parts of their bodies, for those with cybernetic enhancements, are susceptible to hacking. In the game, each time a model is hacked, the controlling player must declare all the items that the targeted model is carrying and cybernetic components in the targeted model that can be exploited by the hack. Models that have a hacking special rule have two additional stats: digital hit points and cyber. The cyber capability is the opposite of the firewall capability, in that it is used when trying to hack instead of defending against a hack. The digital hit points is just a way to track how well connected the model is to the local HyperNet. So if you take a model's digital hit points to 0, you don't remove the model from the board, as if you lost all of his physical hit points, that model just loses its ability to hack. Hacking is carried out by a character using applications or apps. To use an app, a model must use the number of activation points required by the app as indicated in the app's profile. Most apps cost only one activation point, but there are some more powerful ones that can cost more. There is no limit in the rulebook on how many apps can be used by a model in a turn, nor is there a limit on when an app can be used. There are only two restrictions when using apps. Apps cannot be used when in base-to-base contact with an enemy model, and an app can only be used successfully by a crew once per turn. This means that if you use the Overheat app once unsuccessfully, you can try it again in the same turn until you get it right, as the limit is only 1 for successfully uses per turn. When using an app, the attacker will use its cyber stat, and the defender will use their firewall stat. When making an attack, unobstructed line of sight is not required, since the idea of the attack is being launched through the HyperNet, where there are no physical obstacles. In essence, the attacker is seeing the target's electronic aura. This also means that models that are hidden, and thus not able to be targeted by physical world attacks, can still be seen by a model making a hacking attack. However, just because a hidden model can be spotted for a cyber hack does not mean that it then loses its hidden status. The attacking player must declare what app his model will be using and then roll a d10, adding the result of the roll to the cyber stat plus any applicable modifiers. The target player will then roll a d10 and add their firewall stat plus any applicable modifiers to the result. If the defender's roll ties or beats the attacker, the app has failed to penetrate the firewall. If the attacker beats the defender's result, the defender will then announce all the items that are on the targeted model that are vulnerable. Then the attacker will carry out the effects of the app listed in that app's profile. Now, an attacker can target random elements of the environment with an app, such as hacking security cameras or barriers. In that case, if you read the app's profile, you will see a firewall stat. That will be used as the defender's firewall stat in the roll-off. And when the hacking environmental objects, the base-to-base restriction does not apply. Of course, not all apps are attacks. Some help friendly members of a hacker's crew. Those are apps with the keyword defense or support. In that case, the defender does not defend against them. The app automatically succeeds. An application consists of 4 properties: targets, range, cyber bonus, and cyber attack results. Targets are what the application is designed to be used against, since no one app is capable of being used against every type of potential target. For example, Gatecrasher targets network nodes, Enslave targets cyborgs, and Overheat targets weapons. Range is the maximum distance at which an application can be used. Cyberbonus is a modifier listed in the application's profile that gets added to the cyberstat when being used by the hacker. Not all apps have one, so if it's not in the app's profile, you do not get one. Cyber attack results are what happens when an application is successfully used. Some commonalities in hacking results are access, digital damage, disable, bricking, nerf, or control. Some apps will have a critical effect. This will be indicated in the app's profile. But if an attacker rolls a critical or beats their target score by 10 or more, then the critical effect can be used. However, an attacker can always decline to use the critical effect. For some apps, there's also potential for negative effect if a hacker rolls a fumble. These will also be detailed in the app's profile. Now, fumbling while you're trying to hack can have negative consequences such as a trace. In some cases, a failed hack will result in the attacking crew, not just the model that failed at the attack, receiving a trace token. This is actually a physical token that is placed in the game area where everyone can see it. You can also earn multiple trace tokens. During the game in which the trace token was used, the opposing team can remove a trace token in exchange for a one-time +1 bonus to their own hack attempt. It is not indicated in the rulebook if you can use multiple trace tokens for one hack attempt in a turn in order to pile up the bonuses, but the rulebook doesn't say you can't. Any trace tokens left on a crew at the conclusion of a game can have an impact on the crew if you are playing in a campaign. Another negative effect is enhanced firewalls. In some circumstances, a fumbled hack against a firewall can cause a target's firewall stat to increase, making future attacks more difficult. Firewall stats cannot increase more than 3 points above their starting score. A third, rarer form of negative effect is neurofeedback. In some cases, a fumbled attack against an elite defensive system can result in a counterattack being launched against the attacker, resulting in the loss of digital hit points and physical points. So thank you for watching our episode on how to hack in Reality's Edge. In our next episode, we'll be covering non-player characters.